Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. And Lenny, great job. I'm going to kind of pick up where Lenny left off. How about that? I loved his analysis of Dylan Carlson this morning. I saw someone, and I agree, I think Carlson is the best of the litter. I think he's the pick of that litter in the outfield for the Cardinals. I think O'Neill has the tremendous power and is probably adequate defensively. Fowler, I've really lost confidence in over the last couple of years. In fact, I think ever since he left Chicago, he's not been the same player. And, you've got the rookie coming in and the established players already there. Bader, the better defender of the lot. So Bader, you could see play in center field. Carlson, a corner outfielder. He's got the power. He's got the average. He's got the speed. And so how many of you guys are drafting Dylan Carlson in your leagues, redraft leagues, not dynasty leagues, and your redraft leagues? Because I think if you do, it's a smart move. And I think what I want to talk about this morning is, Lenny, great job on the analysis. Good morning, Phil Chaplin. Good morning, Andrea. Good analysis on possible alignment. I want to talk about what the new rules may do and how we're going to look at players maybe a little bit differently as we get into the season and free agents on the waiver wire or drafts that you may not have had. I don't know if you're in a league that's even contemplating a new draft. Lenny mentioned it this morning. What if the Kershaws and the Trouts and the Bryants say, hey, we're not playing? What does that do to reality baseball? What does that do to fantasy baseball? Wow. But instead of going that avenue this morning, I want to go the avenue of looking at some players who now may have a significant impact, who probably, if they were drafted, they were not drafted very high. And so let's start that. How about this morning we go to New York and we first talk about Yoenis Cespedes. Cespedes, there's a lot of unknown with Cespedes because he hasn't played in so long. But last we heard, Cespedes was running, he was hitting, he was gearing up for a season debut sometime after April. And now with the DH in play for all major league teams, Yoenis Cespedes is the most likely candidate to fill that DH role for the Mets. And you're talking about a upper tier power bat put in the middle of the Met lineup without sacrificing J.D. Davis, without sacrificing other players so that Cespedes can have a spot because, they didn't have a DH role to start with. So now if you funnel in, if you will, the Yoenis Cespedes player, McNeil, he can play all the time. Davis can get his regular at-bats. The Mets become, I think, one of the better teams in what was or may still be the National League East offensively. Now, I know you've still got some pitching questions with Syndergaard going down, and, well, they had question marks at the back end of that rotation even before that happened. But think about that lineup with McNeil and Cespedes and last year's Rookie of the Year. We've got a power keg potentially sitting there in New York with this lineup. And I just don't even know what their batting order will be. I do know they've got hitters galore to put in spots. So, just thinking out loud, if you have Nemo leading off, assuming playing, and you've got a Rosario who can hit with some speed. And, Rosario's problems, guys, have always been not at the beginning of the years, but at the ending of the seasons when it appears he's worn down. You're not going to have that this year. Wearing down, I think, is now out of the equation. It's April is over. We don't. I said this ad nausumly on earlier in the week. We don't have a plan. We don't know when we're going to start. Every day that goes by when we don't know when we're going to start, these players who either were injured or wear down at the end of the year, or rookies that we're all going to talk about this morning, they all become much more viable in the fantasy realm. And now with the talk that rosters may include, 27, 28, 30 players. Wow. They're going to be batters, pitchers who may not have even crossed your radar in February, who now could be significant players when the season starts. Look at this Mets lineup. Let's just give a projection here. So let's say Nemo leads off, and let's say McNeil bats second, and let's say Alonso hits third, and Cespedes hits fourth, or Conforto fourth and Cespedes fifth, Davis, Cano, Rosario, you see where I'm going with this. And their catcher, Wilson Ramos, remember guys, last year Ramos hit 288 and drove in 73 runs, and catcher not being a position we usually go to for offensive numbers, the Mets have an offensive catcher. I think the question mark in that lineup may be Cano, his age certainly, 15 years in the major leagues, and 37 years of age, and last year only hit 256. But we know Cano has a great stick, and he averaged 159 games per season from 2007 to 2017. Okay, so he has a long history of playing every day. I think on the Mets, I look at Cespedes as a huge piece added to that puzzle. Again, a National League team with a DH. And so I want to go out west and talk about how the strong get stronger, if you will. I want to talk about the Dodgers for a minute, how these rules, you don't hear much talk about the Dodgers. We know they're strong. We know they're, well, look, first of all, let's assume on a pitching standpoint that Clayton Kershaw pitches. Now, Kershaw, who has had issues with health, with stamina, with, later now in his career, you're giving Clayton Kershaw a shortened season. And I think he, of many pitchers, we're talking about another one on the West Coast in just a moment, but of many pitchers, Clayton Kershaw could very well benefit the most. Now, the Dodgers, already strong. Oh, come on. They are loaded at so many positions, and to have an even stronger than would be Clayton Kershaw is incredible. But I'm looking at this lineup, and now if you can throw a DH in, a player that just doesn't get as much hype, I think, as he should. But you're talking about Jock Peterson. Look, Jock Peterson hit 36, did you hear me? 36 home runs last year. And I don't think you would consider Peterson a full-time regular player, not on last year's team. He murders right-handed pitchers rather, not so good against lefties, but giving him that opportunity. Now with Betts there, it took away an outfield spot. Now I know they traded Verdugo, but Verdugo was not a full-time player either, and he was a lefty. So you take away one lefty, Peterson now, if you will, could assume that what was a dual role, he could have it singularly. He can play first base, he can play outfield, and I think he is a huge benefiter from the delayed season. Another player on the Dodgers that I think now has more value than before is Gavin Lux. The questions about Lux were simply not his ability to play. Because, look, this kid hit .347 with 26 homers, 10 stolen bases between AA and AAA last year. So there's not a question about the talent. The question with Lux, who can play second base, who can play shortstop, was what type of opportunity would he have? And now with the DH, it gives another bat, understanding he's been working out at a friend's gym. I read that in the LA Times. So, continuing to work out, he adds that spark to the Dodgers. He's 22. I think he makes the team. I think he plays a lot. I think the DH role benefits LA because now you can give Betts a day at DH, Bellinger a day at DH, even Corey Seager if you want to do that, Peterson, Lux. You've got a revolving door there for them to give a player a day off in the field and add yet another potent bat to that lineup. 2 teams, a few players. Let's stay out west. How many of you guys are more than intrigued? Notice I said more than intrigued by the Oakland Athletics. I just think that the Oakland Athletics, even though we know they're good, I think they could be a major sleeper. I don't think the A's get enough applause for the team that they have. And we can talk about, and we're going to, the hitters and the pitchers on this team. Okay, so let's do this. Let's talk about their bats first. And when you look at their outfield, shall we? Underrated is the key word. Ramon Laureano, last year, not playing a full season because of an injury, he hit .288, 24 homers, 13 stolen bases. Now he's going to be their regular center fielder, barring injury. I know we're on a reduced schedule, but if you could project numbers based on last year's numbers, and I think that's what we have to do, look, he's a top 100 fantasy player. And he's going to be playing every day. And I know they're on the West Coast. I know they're not the most publicized team. I get that. Laureano, to me, is a fantasy stud, a star, and another one out there in the outfield that I really like is Mark Canha. 26 homers. He hit .274. He's 30 years old now. He led the team in several categories last year, even though being a part-time player. Now, down the stretch, he was able, you could say, hit his stride, got more bats, got more regular time. Canha, again, very unnoticed in that Oakland outfield. And then we get to their infield. Wow. I've just talked about Matt Olson. You got to remember, folks, Matt Olson hit 36 home runs last year with a broken hand for 6 weeks. And remember this, not only did he break his hand after the season had started, I think he played, 2 games in Japan against Seattle, broke his hand in game 2. Then he had to heal. Then he had to get back in baseball shape. So he missed significant time with the hand, which healed, obviously, because he, after that, went on to hit 36 home runs. Now, I looked at some projections before we were delayed with the start of the season. And based on 162 games, people, some procrastinators were saying Olson may hit 35 homers. Where did that come from? Okay, he had 36, missing almost 2 months. Matt Olson is a 45 home run machine, and as he matures and gets into his prime years, I was just champing at the bit to draft him in whatever league I could get him in. I know we love Freddie Freeman at first base, but for draft position value and the numbers I think he's going to put up, and oh, by the way, could you imagine him playing in a ballpark like, I don't know, Yankee Stadium? Not in Oakland. He's 45 to 50 home runs wherever he plays. Put him in a better offensive park. Oh my gosh.